My name is Ian Glover and I'm President of CREST-International. First of all, I'd like to sincerely apologise for not being with you at this particular event. It's extremely important to us. We believe that basic cyber hygiene is a really important concept and that the rollout of it within Malaysia would actually make a significant difference in terms of basic levels of cyber hygiene and also to protect small and large enterprise against the types of attacks we're seeing coming across the internet. CREST is a not-for-profit organisation. That's a very important concept for us because it means we set the bar extremely high and we have no reason to lower it for anybody. We break down our main activities in terms of 4 different areas. The first is the accreditation of companies. This is to make sure that the company is fit for purpose to do the types of activities that it's describing. We provide accreditation in penetration testing, cybersecurity incident response, cybersecurity related threat intelligence and secure operations centres. So in other words, what we're doing is a lot of the heavy lifting on behalf of the buying community to make sure that organisation is fit for purpose in those areas. Again, our accreditations are internationally recognised, and I think what we're trying to do in Malaysia is to build that ecosystem to provide access to your domestic capability, but also to provide you with access to international export. Right at the bottom of that stack is basic cyber hygiene. The example of the schemes I put here is Cyber Essentials, which we've implemented throughout the UK. We now have thousands of people that carry Cyber Essentials certificates, and what we've got is a large number of certification bodies and issuers that are allowed to issue certificates in this particular area. That basic level of cyber hygiene is really important because what we're seeing is an increased number of basic attacks. These are internet-based attacks using fairly standard techniques, and what we're trying to do there is to increase the capability of protecting an individual organisation against those basic level attacks. Around about 80% of the attacks we see coming across the internet are basic, and with basic cyber hygiene you'll be able to protect yourself. We're also seeing attacks coming from different areas. So where we're seeing organisations who are protecting themselves, they're now being attacked through their supply chain. So it's really important, if you've got a supply chain, that you understand that at least basic level cyber hygiene has been applied to them to make sure they're not the vulnerable chain link in your chain that will allow somebody to access your systems. So we're seeing basic cyber hygiene being applied within the supply chain quite significantly. In addition to that, we generally see the supply chain as being fairly weak, particularly small organisations who don't necessarily understand why they would be subject to an attack, and they don't necessarily understand how they fit in the system of supporting larger ones. So not only should they be aware of the need to protect themselves against ransomware and attack, but they should also understand their position in the supply chain and the vulnerability they could introduce to their clients. There's also limited take-up of some of the existing standards. Things like 27001 I really like in terms of an ISO standard. It's predominantly a security management thing and it's quite heavy in terms of its implementation. What we're looking at here is basic level controls. What you should do is look at the overall ecosystem to make sure you've got some basic level of hygiene in place. The way that we came up with the standard for basic cyber hygiene was to first of all look at something that the UK government produced, the 10 steps to cyber security. We identified those things that we could carry out some form of technical assessment about, and we excluded things like awareness programs and policies. So these were things, tangible things from a technology perspective we could assess. What you need to do with any hygiene is actually then surround those with appropriate policies and procedures and awareness programs. But really we're identifying the primary areas where we believe that basic cyber hygiene could be applied. We also looked at the types of attacks that have been successful, and as I've mentioned, around about 80% of those are really very simple attacks that good patch management, good change control, etc. would actually help a great deal. So in other words, we've identified the areas where we think we can make the most impact for the least cost in terms of both its technical difficulty and in terms of the cost of the implementation and management. In terms of working within Malaysia, we've done quite a lot of work within the country for some time. We have a formal agreement with Bank Negara where we're looking to try to develop both the ecosystem to deliver that critical national infrastructure, but also to provide greater levels of assurance in terms of the financial services. We've done quite a lot of work in terms of trying to build the ecosystem with some of your existing organisations, and also we are working very closely with individuals to move them forward in terms of a certification program that demonstrates their capability. We're also working with both remote and physical training providers to come into Malaysia to actually upskill the domestic capability to make sure it's fit for purpose for the domestic marketplace, as well as the potential for international export. This particular event is to mark the launch of the cyber hygiene work that we're doing in collaboration with the MSC Cyberport and also iTGRC. I believe this is a really important piece of work. The memorandum that was signed, I think, is really good. We've been working now with Cyber Essentials in the UK for more than 3 years, and we've learnt a lot of lessons since then. There's also other initiatives such as the NIST basic cyber hygiene work that's been done. There's been some work done by ANISA for Central Europe, and also some other areas of Southeast Asia have also been looking at basic cyber hygiene controls. And I think this is a really good opportunity to pull all of those international areas together to come out with an internationally recognised standard that we can implement on a much more consistent basis. And I think if Malaysia really embraces this, then they could be the forerunner for something really exciting that will not only help the domestic marketplace, but will also have significant international influence. We also apply our qualifications to the overall stack. So what we're trying to do with basic cyber hygiene is make sure that it's accessible and is available to everybody who needs it. Within Malaysia, you've got a large community of small enterprise as well as large, and we want to make sure that that basic cyber hygiene for the supply chain and for the protection of small organisations is in place. And what we need to do is to have the sign-off done by suitably qualified individuals. Whilst recognising if we're going to work at the critical national infrastructure area, then those individuals need significantly more skills to be able to do that in an appropriate way. So again, what we're trying to do in Malaysia is work with you to build that ecosystem to deliver it in a consistent way.